So I'd like to start by giving you a little picture of the kind of person I am. Before I got sick with CDiff, I was balancing a full-time research job at the university, studying the genetics of pediatric cancer, while simultaneously getting my master's degree in science policy and bioethics. I love to travel, and I'm the kind of person who will spontaneously buy airline tickets and find myself in another country a few weeks later. So I've always been a very active, adventurous person. And then in 2012, I became sick with CDiff, and every single aspect of my life came to a screeching halt.
As the summer went on, my symptoms were getting worse, and so I started developing really chronic diarrhea. The abdominal pain worsened, and by this time, the diarrhea had increased to a point where, it was 20, 30 times a day. And in just a couple of those months, I had lost about 20 pounds. I was really malnourished, and so I kept insisting to my doctors, there's something else going on here. They decided to do a retest on all of the stool panels, and that's when they found the CDiff diagnosis.
CDiff, Clostridium difficile infection, has been around ever since antibiotics were introduced into clinical practice. It was at first largely a nuisance diarrhea, but something changed in about the year 2000 or so, where this illness has become more virulent. C. difficile infection itself happens about 500,000 people. Rarely talked about because it's a diarrheal illness, even though it kills more people in the US than, say, AIDS does. It's a direct complication of use of antibiotics. In our bodies, we have a microbial organ, commonly referred to these days as microbiome or microbiota. And those microbes are part of our bodies. And whenever you take antibiotics, you're like throwing a grenade in there. That community gets disrupted. That creates a vulnerability to some infections, and C. difficile is the poster child for that kind of a complication. And one of the most challenging problems in clinic was that this infection didn't go away.
As a researcher, I started digging in and reading all about C. diff, and somehow stumbled across this article about Dr. Alexander Khoruts and this microbiota fecal transplant work that he was doing at the University of Minnesota, where I worked.
You actually have to do a transplant of the microbes from a healthy donor into the patient to repair the injury that the antibiotics caused to the gut microbes. We call the procedure a microbiota transplant.
When I met with him, he said right away, "You're a good candidate for this. Let's get you started and get you prepped for your transplant."
As she was recovering from colonoscopy, still in the endoscopy suite, she said, "I feel different."
Within weeks after that, I knew I was better. And a month later, I was back at the gym working out. 2 months later, I was back on an airplane traveling. It was my cure.
So the story that you have with Amanda and Dr. Khoruts is the crossroads of professional and personal. It's not only enriching for both, but it's really what we all do day in and day out.
To come up with a treatment, to offer something that when people are just suffering for months and months. It's been an incredible ride for a physician. She has a unique perspective as a patient and as a researcher. That's why there were public hearings, and that's why she was able to present her perspective, which I think was incredibly impactful.
It has saved tens of thousands of lives, including mine. It would be highly unethical at this point to even consider terminating enforcement discretion, knowing we have a treatment that works. I'm here today because of enforcement discretion. Thank you very much.
That's what I want. I want everybody to feel okay talking about this. These illnesses really isolate people more than I think people realize. Being a researcher, it was fascinating to me to be part of something that was so cutting edge and groundbreaking, and that this is going to be something that really changed medicine. If you've made it 2 months after your transplant, if you haven't recurred, it's deemed a success. So when we hit that 2-month mark, I booked a flight and got on an airplane immediately. And I think I took 10 vacations that year to make up for lost time.